Hi everybody, my name is Rebecca Beattie. I'm the author of The Wheel of the Year amongst other titles, and I'm recording this video just to say happy Imbolc, blessed Imbolc to all of you. You might hear slightly different pronunciations of the name of the festival. Some people prefer to call it Imbolc and pronounce that B, other people prefer Imbolc. I use the two interchangeably. So I'm just recording this short video to give you a bit of a sense of what goes on in a witch's household when we're celebrating Imbolc on the Wheel of the Year. So the thing to bear in mind is, first of all, our date is February the 2nd for the Northern Hemisphere. However, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you'll be celebrating Lammas at this time because your seasons are opposite to ours in the Northern Hemisphere. The other thing I just want to say before I carry on talking is that one of the questions that people often ask me is, when do I have to celebrate these festivals? What if I miss the day or get it wrong, or, don't worry about it. With nature, what we're celebrating is what's happening in nature at this time. So it's very difficult often to pinpoint an exact moment that this is the moment of Imbolc. If you're a bit out here or there, it doesn't matter because it's the spirit of the season which can be maintained for weeks, sometimes days afterwards or before. So it's not the end of the world. If you don't get it on the 2nd of February or the 1st of February or whatever it is that you're aiming for, please don't give yourself a hard time about that. The thing with modern paganism and Wicca in particular, which is the flavour that I celebrate, we're here to celebrate life. We're here to have our life experience enhanced by our spiritual path, not made to feel that you're really bad if you get the day wrong or the date wrong, or that's not what it's about. We're not in the business of beating ourselves with a big stick every time things aren't perfect. If you've been with me in classes or if you've read my other books, you'll know I'm an absolute avid hater of this seeking perfection thing that we do, because none of us are perfect. Nature isn't perfect. Just go with the flow and do the best that you can and enjoy what you're doing, because that's what we're here to do. So I'm just going to read you a little short excerpt of The Wheel of the Year, the chapter that I wrote on Imbolc. So just to give you a sense of the flavour of the season and what we're celebrating. So as I said, we're around February the 2nd in the Northern Hemisphere. Our themes for Imbolc are purification and dreams and imagination and the unconscious and youthfulness. This is one of the festivals where we're celebrating new life and new beginnings. Our planet, if you follow me with planetary magic, is the moon, which tells us something about the qualities of what we're celebrating here. This is all about what's unconscious, what's under the surface. Our direction in a witch's circle is northeast, our tarot card is the moon, and our astrological sign would be Aquarius. And I always start my classes on the Wheel of the Year with this question to you, which I'll ask you again. What's happening in nature where you are right now? And if you're not sure, please feel free to just go out and take a walk or look out of the window and see what you can see and just take in what nature's doing at the moment. Even if you're living in a city, there'll still be aspects of nature where you are. If I want to know what's happening in nature at a particular time of year, I always start by looking back over my journals. As a habitual diary writer since the age of 11, they do have the potential to leave me frozen with mortification at some of my preoccupations. But just around the time I was working on my PhD thesis at Middlesex University, I began to make more of a habit of recording what I was seeing in nature on my walks. At the time I was writing the fictional reimagining of the diaries of the writer Mary Webb, who was renowned for her microscopic observances of nature, to the extent that she could tell you which flowers a bee had visited by the colour of the pollen on its legs. Having lived in London for the last 20 plus years at that time, to take on her character effectively, I needed to up my game in terms of what I was noticing. So that year, whilst still living in a studio flat on the outskirts of London during the pandemic time, I started writing a journal of what I was seeing each day. Each weekend I would take the local bus out to the various bits of Greenbelt if I could. If I couldn't get the bus during lockdown, I walked out that far. And I would walk for as long as I could. And I've included some of my extracts of the diary throughout the Wheel of the Year book just to give you a flavour of what I was noticing. So I wrote for Imbolc. Imbolc seems to have come earlier than usual to the city this year. On Christmas Day, I was walking around with my thick winter coat tied around my waist, dressed only in a t-shirt, sweating with the effort of pulling my feet out of the thick, viscous mud that sucked them down. The inexperienced oak saplings were already in leaf, whilst in Russell Square, the gardens by the British Museum, the daffodils were already in bloom by New Year. But then mid-January brought with it a cold snap, leaving me to wonder if our cultural imagery of the seasons was the wrong way round. The city had a blanket of snow wrapped tightly around her shoulders, and everything was held in stillness for just one day. There was no wind, so a layer of snow still clung tightly to the branches of the trees, and even the birds were hushed. The snowfall didn't last. It's unusual for us to get a heavy winter in this mild corner of the UK, unlike other places along the same. It will always be a fleeting thing tempting us to walk out in it and build snowmen, reminding us of the harsher winters of our childhoods, and then disappearing within the space of a heartbeat. Getting out early for my weekend walks enabled me to be the first pair of human feet to walk across the wide fields of white, feeling the compacted crunch beneath my feet. It was clean enough here to indulge in my favourite childhood snow pastime of eating handfuls of the ice, plucked off the gateposts and the fences far above dog height. And I could see the evidence of those who'd been there before me. A fox dragging its feather-light breakfast back to its hole. A deer picking its way delicately along the slippery path. A solitary bird hopping its way across a wooden bench, perhaps surprised by the cold underfoot. But the stillness and the quiet also enabled me to shock a few fellow walkers. A muntjac deer walking across a snow-laden field. A golden pheasant flying out from the undergrowth ahead of me, crying out in irritation at being interrupted in its morning routine. Even the mere was frozen solid, the water preserved perfectly in feathered patterns of ice, with its resident moorhens held captive in one last remaining liquid corner. The visiting lone swan that was here over Christmas had departed for warmer waters, no doubt in search of some companions. The lakes and ponds of the city centre are far more populated with a myriad bird life than this lonely outpost in Zone 5. In the farmlands, ploughing would also begin soon after Imbolc. I used to love watching the process on my walks around the outskirts of London, where the fields in the Greenbelt would begin ploughing to prepare the ground for planting a few weeks later. You could see the process of the turning soil in progress, revealing the colour changes in thick bands across the fields, turning from the black of the exposed winter earth to the rich brown soil underneath. So I would invite you at this time to go out wherever you can, whether it's into a city park or a garden or just outside and look up to the sky to see what's happening in the tree life, and ask yourself the question, what's happening in nature where I am? and I will look forward to seeing you all soon, either here on the YouTube channel or at the Treadwell's online classes or at some of my other events that I'll be running. Come and join me on Substack, on Instagram, wherever you are. I will be round about the place, shuffling around in the undergrowth, looking at what's happening in nature.